In this episode of Barrels and Barrels, a Bourbon and Baseball podcast, we're talking about Shohei Ohtani, done for the year. He had his surgery. The Tampa Bay Rays, they're building up a new stadium. Our whiskey of the week, Lone Elm Single Barrel Texas Straight Wheat Whiskey. Also, the Braves, they've clinched a playoff spot, but did they go party hardy? We'll go talk about that in the full episode of episode 43, Barrels and Barrels, a Bourbon and Baseball podcast, coming up.
This is Barrels and Barrels, a Bourbon and Baseball podcast, with your hosts, Brandon Spinner and Michael Burns.
Well, hello and welcome into Barrels and Barrels, a Bourbon and Baseball podcast. I am Brandon. That is Michael. You're watching us on YouTube, maybe listening to us on Spotify, Apple, Amazon, iHeartRadio, or Google Podcasts. Wherever you're at, welcome in. And if this is your first time joining us, thank you. We'd love for you to hit the subscribe button, whether that's here on YouTube or in Spotify, where you can now watch our videos in the app. And also, we've got some questions down below, or also if you're listening on Spotify, you can answer our poll of the episode, which you'll get to as we go throughout the episode. So head down over there. I am Brandon. That's Michael Burns. Mikey, do you know what the significance of this episode is?
It's number 43.
Number 43, but do you know why that's so special?
Is that your favorite number?
No, it's not my
Are
favorite.
you 43 years old?
No, I'm not 43 years old. Episode 43 is our 1 year anniversary, buddy. Today
is really?
1 year of Barrels and Barrels, a Bourbon and Baseball podcast. Clearly, you've done your homework.
I knew it was coming. I just didn't. It caught me quick all of a sudden. I guess I knew we were coming up on it right before playoffs last year.
Yeah. Episode 43. This will drop on September the 21st. Our first podcast came out on September the 22nd of 2022. So a full year of BNB. We've made it. Episode 43. You may think you missed a couple of weeks. Oh, that's right. I had something planned for this, and I totally dropped the ball. Son of a gun. As we get to that, yes, I totally had a very good idea, and this is what it was going to be. Oh, I muted the phone, because that's what you're supposed to do when it comes. This is totally great podcasting going on right here, but so there's our horn. That we made it a year.
That was so anticlimactic. I thought there was something like some song coming or something.
Yeah,
it was just
today is your birthday, but no. Yeah, so episode 43.
Well, congrats, buddy.
Yeah, congrats. Cheers. We'll drink to that, and we'll get to that in our podcast coming up. So episode 43, let's start it off the same way we've started off since episode 23. For the last 20 episodes, we've been doing this. Talk about the best number of this episode in Major League Baseball, the best number 43 to ever play the game, and I think this is a slam dunk, no doubter. There's only one guy who's worn it for 20-plus years, and he's got the fourth most WAR of any player who wore the number, and the three guys ahead of him wore it for 3 years, 1 year, and 1 year respectively. So Dennis Eckersley, 21 years in the number, 62.1 WAR, Hall of Famer. I'm going to say that this is the Dennis Eckersley episode. What do you think?
Yeah, it's not a very popular number. I think as we get into these higher numbers, it's gonna get either really obvious or it's gonna be a fight, because there's gonna be like guys who only wore it for 6 years, like Bill Nicholson wore it for 6 years, Kurt Schilling for 3, Rick Sutcliffe for 7, but only Dennis Eckersley's anywhere close. Ken Forsch at 16 years, but only a 26 WAR.
Raul Mondesi is a name that'll jump out for a lot of us. Jeff Nelson, who was a pitcher for the Mariners, Yankees, Texas Rangers, and White Sox. And then Andy Ashby. But all those 12 to 16 years, Dennis Eckersley, Hall of Fame career. Dude not only started and won just about 200 career games, then he became a closer, nearly saving 400 games, 390 saves. So 297 wins, 390 saves, a career WAR of 62.1, and he spent half his career as a closer or a reliever once he left the Chicago Cubs and headed on to the West Coast to be on the Oakland Athletics. Did you know he was a Cub? He was on that 84 team.
Yeah, he looks way all too familiar to not be remembered with the flow and that stash.
Yeah, Dennis Eckersley, he Hall of Famer, I believe. Yes, Hall of Fame MVP once, he Cy Young once, 6-time All-Star, ALCS MVP. 2 times he won the Rolaids Relief Award and 1989 World Series. So a lot of accolades. I'm just going to say the Dennis Eckersley episode.
Yeah, pretty safe bet. Drafted in the 3rd round in 1972 from Washington High School in Vermont, California.
Yeah, by the Cleveland Guardians organization, Cleveland Indians. So I don't get fined for that one. And speaking of that, we're at like $12 for Brandon in fines, and Michael has like $4 in fines. So we'll go buy ourselves a nice bottle of Evan Williams Bottle and Bond to celebrate our 1 year as a podcast. So that is it for the jersey number. Sometimes it takes a little bit longer than that, but this one, slam dunk, Dennis Eckersley. The Dennis Eckersley episode on the 1 year anniversary of Barrels and Barrels, a Bourbon and Baseball podcast. If this is your first time, thanks for joining us. Again, please hit that subscribe button down below. If you haven't done that already, we're putting out bourbon content and baseball content, 2 different channels. You're likely watching this on @Barrels and Barrels Pod, but don't forget to check out our sister channel, B&B Bourbon. That's all bourbon related, bourbon reviews, bourbon hunts, bourbon shorts, anything that has to deal with bourbon is on that page. And you can find more of our baseball content at Barrels and Barrels Pod. That's where you can also find us on Instagram, Facebook, and TikTok at Barrels, the letter N, Barrels Pod. And then on X, formerly known as Twitter until Elon ruined that, at Barrels and Barrels. As I mentioned earlier, we're on Apple, we're on Spotify, Google, iHeartRadio, and Amazon Podcasts. 20 out of 25 star reviews on Apple, 14 out of 14 5-star reviews on Spotify. And we'd love to hear your thoughts on what you think about this podcast. If you haven't done that already, leave us a rating. And also, if you write a review, we'll give you a call out on air. And with our 1 year anniversary, we've still got merch to sell. These t-shirts are for sale. CharlieMikeNeverWeekend.com. Our friends over there, $25 out the door. And also glassware, hats, the one Mikey's sporting. I've got a whiskey wisdom glass. What you drinking out tonight?
I got my Tooth.
It looks like home plate on the bottle with a bottom with a baseball diamond. And Connor Joe just hit a 3-run tank. So back to being down. So the Barrels and Barrels of Bourbon and Baseball podcast. You can also email us, barrelsandbarrels@gmail.com. This episode brought to you by Whiskey Towers. Our friends over there at whiskeytowers.com. Use promo code Whiskey Weather, all capital. That'll get you 10% off your order of what a whiskey tower is. And that is one of the coolest things I've seen in this industry. It's a beer tap for bourbon. You just dump your bottles in there, you pull the tap, and you can fill up your glass.
Really easy to put some, if you got a glass of Coke, just to pour it right into, into your Glencairn. What are you talking about?
Yeah, so Whiskey Weather on whiskeytowers.com is that promo code. We'll put that right there at the bottom of your screen for you. So Whiskey Weather is the promo code. Just use that and you will get 10% off your order at whiskeytowers.com. So with that, let's jump right into our whiskey segment of Barrels and Barrels of Bourbon and Baseball podcast. I've already poured myself some. I think you did as well. We are going to be going with Lone Elm Distillery's Premium Texas Spirits Single Barrel Texas Straight Wheat Whiskey. There's a lot of words to that. Let's just tell you that it's a single barrel, 100% wheater out of Texas.
It's 100% wheat?
100% straight wheat whiskey. Everything I looked at said it was all wheat. Soft winter wheat with this whiskey, as this is our 1 year anniversary whiskey. There it is. Lone Elm Texas Straight Wheat. Texas Straight Wheat Whiskey. Man, there's a whole lot of words to that. But yes. What are your first thoughts as you get the nose on this, buddy?
I can smell it from a distance. I don't know if it's the glass or if it's the strong nose coming off this thing. Immediately get the sweetness of that wheat for sure. Some not brown sugar, but like a light maple
candy
coming on. Yeah,
candied maple, like maple bacon almost.
Bacon? Did you say bacon?
You got bacon? You get any maple bacon out of that? So this is a single barrel.
How about some mint coming out off this thing? Pretty strong.
You got mint?
Yeah.
I can pull a little bit of mint. Maybe I'd say some parsley. I don't know.
Ooh, yeah,
Yeah.
that's a good note there. I
Yeah.
get that.
Oh, single barrel. So this comes in at a pretty high proof. If you just saw it on your screen, 133 proof.
Damn!
Yeah. So this will put some hair on your chest, so to
So
speak.
I can't snob over this one today, huh?
No,
Oh, it's only 92 proof, huh?
I wouldn't say that this smells hot, right? Sometimes you get some of those higher
No.
proof whiskeys and like you feel like you're singeing off the nose hair. I don't get that. As I go back, get a little bit maybe of a walnut out of it, like the bitter
get a
part of
lot.
the walnut.
I get the candy and then into a strong mint.
I get some like sweet tart candy into like a walnut and like a maple bacon. A weird random assortment, but it's a very, I'd say the nose is pretty good. I see you dive in there for, you got him.
I was trying so hard, but whew.
So your first thoughts after you just got your Texas hug?
Yeah, Texas. It's hot like Texas, baby. I'm not like, I mean, it's 133 proof because of course it's hot. I'm not going to sit here and act like it's not. It's not.
My tongue's
You okay
numb.
there? Yeah,
Yeah.
it's hot. I actually feel it in my throat even too. I usually it's only the Kentucky hug stays in the mouth there, and I feel it going all the way down.
Yeah, you can feel it go down your throat all the way down into your stomach.
Damn.
First blush, it's warm. There's definitely a tingle to it. I don't think it pulls away though from the flavor. I still get some decent maple flavor, some even caramel out of this. What do you think? Is it too hot?
I gotta dive back. I gotta get another pull, so I can focus on the flavor more than the heat.
I'd say walnutty is like my first thought. It's not as sweet as the nose, not at all. Part of that, I'm sure, is a single barrel. Again, this is 133 proof. But to me, it doesn't scream Texas, right? Like
I was gonna say the opposite. I was gonna say I taste
Really?
the Texas. Like you said, you had a walnut nose a little bit. As I was drinking it, the walnut hit my nose, and now I taste it as well. But I think the higher proof helps tone down the walnut. That's a typical Texas taste.
See,
So
I
what are you
normally get like
thinking?
I normally get like a cactusy Texas hint. And anything I've ever had out of Texas, it's more so like got a cactusy, like what I would assume aloe vera would taste like. My tongue is numb. I might be talking to
It's
like
numb.
this.
I've only taken 2 sips, and the thing is numb.
But I don't feel like it blows the doors off. We feel the heat all the way through. The finish itself is long. It's almost like, I'm trying to think, like you ever get a cavity filled?
Mm-hmm.
You know, the pre-Novocaine that they give you, like they put the stick in your mouth to like numb the certain spot that they're going to jab you with the Novocaine needle.
He started drilling before I was numb. Some beach.
Well, and now we've got to put a thank you to Blake Shelton on this. So I'm going to mark that down.
That's not Blake Shelton, is it?
Yeah, Blake Shelton, Some Beach.
No.
Back in the early 2000s.
Oh, okay.
Yep.
It's Blake Shelton.
Yep. Why do you doubt me, Michael Burns?
I thought it was
that's like the feeling.
Alan Jackson was coming to my head.
Let's drive, Daddy. That feeling's starting to come back in my mouth already, though. So it's not like it's a total numbing experience. I do feel the tingle on the tongue. If you're a fan of high proof stuff, this is
probably
pretty good.
Let's get to the notes. Besides the heat of it.
Well, I'm assuming it's 4 years old. It was barreled in April of 2018. It's 2023 here. I don't know when it was bottled. It doesn't say that on the bottle, but it was barrel number 970. Comes in at 66.5 ABV, which if you do the math, it's 133 proof, as we've already told you. So I'm looking at 4, maybe 5 years, depending on when they bottled it. If it was bottled after April, then we're talking a 5-year whiskey. So it's got some age to it, say 3 years in Texas per year in the bottle, in the barrel. We're talking 12 to 15 year expectancy. So I can definitely feel that with there's some oak to it. On the bottle, it says aged in new oak barrels, which is not, they don't necessarily have to do that because it's not a bourbon. Bourbon is the only one that strictly says you have to age it in a newer oak barrel, I believe. But I mean, the nose is still sweeter than the palate to me. I've got that walnutty flavor.
Right. Besides the heat, it is a sweeter, being a weeder. The finish is very leathery and oaky. Does that make sense?
Yeah. I got some cinnamon, like a cinnamon tingle.
I'm trying to pull out what I get in the beginning of it.
You get any cherry out of this? Like the back half, I get like a dark cherry, not like a candied cherry. Like the nose to me smells more candied cherry, like a maraschino, like kitty cocktail cherry. On the back end, I'm thinking like a dark Washington cherry.
See, I get the cherry on the front, so it starts cherry, moves into the walnut, and finishes oak. Still with strong walnut, so walnutty oak with some leather there. That's my roller coaster right there. It's got some layers to it.
It does definitely have some layers, just like your way to say, like ogres have layers, Michael. Ogres have layers. This has layers.
Well, donkeys don't have layers.
Earlier we were talking off cam. The word I came up with instead of complex, I think, is intricate. This is an intricate palette, right? Yeah, you don't like that word?
I mean, I like it. I think we're just going to run right back to complex.
So on the bottle, soft winter wheat transformed by American white oak barrels and intense Texas sun to deliver a smooth, uncut, and unfiltered spirit with a hearty finish hinting of vanilla and dried cherries. So I get the cherries on the finish. I don't get quite the vanilla.
No, I don't get vanilla.
I do get some of that brown sugar that you mentioned on the nose. I don't get it on the nose, but I get it more so on the old the palate.
I enjoy this from a high proof side of things. I don't know that I've had anything this high. I think the highest I had was my Old Forester single barrel strength at 131.x.
31.
Yeah, I'm not sure exactly what it was.
Add 2 drops of water to see what that does to the whole palate of this. I wonder if it'll open it up a little bit.
Possibly.
Nose smells a little more bitter just off the bat.
Yeah, here MSRP of this Lone Elm single barrel weeder is about $65.
Yeah, I've seen anywhere from $67.99 to $72. The regular small batch on Total Wine's website was $57.99. So you're going to have probably $10 when it comes to a single barrel, right?
Right. So you said it was about 4 years. So about $40, $50 for being craft, probably.
And then, so that's normally what you would do for a small batch, but then you add the single barrel pricing to it, and it's a little bit higher as well. So after adding that drop of water,
so not a terrible price, especially for the proof here.
It mellows it down just enough that you don't feel the numbing right off the bat. I think there's definitely more of that brown sugar and maple coming through that we have. Now, as I talk, the tongue starts to tingle, but it's not like, it's like that pins and needle feeling, like when you've like sat on your legs too much on the toilet, and your feet start to tingle. It's not quite numb. Yeah, it's not quite numb, but you get the pins and needles. That's what my tongue feels like. Man, this is good. It opens up a little bit just with the 2 drops of water. I liked it without the water, and I'm going to say I probably like it maybe a little bit more with the water. Do you have any water around you? Usually no.
I don't. I actually have a water sitting on my counter in the kitchen.
Well, we're not going to
supposed to be over here.
We're not going to pause for you to go get your water, Michael. So as we go ahead on our Barrels and Barrels of Bourbon and Baseball podcast rating scale, where do you have this puppy? Well, first, I guess we should probably talk about what our rating scale is. So if you are new to the program, our rating scale is a baseball rated scale. Mikey, what's the number one rating?
Top of the top is Hall of Fame. We haven't rated anything of Hall of Fame, but that's top shelf, one of the best. And then after Hall of Fame, we've had a couple of these. We've had All-Stars. Those are your guys that are in your everyday lineup, and they're special on your team. Following that, Brandon, is our
everyday player. Just think about the players that you have in your lineup every day on a team. Maybe they're not all-stars, but you can rely on them day in and day out, and that's what you have on your bar. And then when you're looking at a bench player, that's someone who's good every now and then. They come in, they mix things up, and in a bourbon world, that's maybe once a month, maybe once every 2 weeks or so. Otherwise, what we're looking at is just a solid, but not the best out there. And then designate for assignment. You're Mr. DFA, so Mikey Burns. What is a DFA?
DFA is something that you just don't enjoy, you won't want to spend your money on again, and you don't want to recommend to a friend. Unless it's a friend you don't like that much. Then you're like, dude, you got to try this. And you push it on them.
So is that what you get, Tommy?
Yeah, exactly.
I'm just kidding. So on our Barrels and Barrels, a Bourbon and Baseball podcast rating scale, which we just ran through, where do you have this Texas straight wheat whiskey from Lone Elm?
I've got this as a solid bench piece for me. I love the high proof of it. It's not syrupy. It brings out all the flavors without being too buttery in my mouth. What keeps it from being that everyday player is that Texas peanut flavor.
The first time you mentioned peanut in this entire podcast. Everything's been
peanut.
Walnut, and now you decide it's got a Texas peanut flavor.
So excuse me, Texas walnut flavor.
There you go.
Not something I typically enjoy is that there's a certain bourbon that is labeled as the Texas bourbon, and it wasn't good. This is not overpowering in that walnut peanut flavor. I enjoyed the high proof of it. That's what I think helped mellow that peanut flavor out. I got the oak, I got the fruit in the beginning. I would go I benched it instead of everyday playered it because of that tingle of the burn of that 133. I don't know that I could drain this guy and destroy my tongue.
I think that would definitely be a tongue destroyer if you constantly went at that. And that's, again, why I will also rate this as a bench. And for those of you just listening for the first time, a bench is not a knock by any means. Think of all the good bench players that come in, pinch hitters. You've got those spot starters who fill in, maybe come throw 6 or 7 2-run inning, give you a quality start. Or maybe that's that long arm out of the bullpen who keeps your team in the game. A bench player is very important, and that's what I'm going to give this as well. Just because of the higher proof, I think anything that is high proof, you normally probably lean towards the bench, unless it's just so monumental that it's towards the top of the charts. But I'm going to go to this maybe every once in a while. I do think once you add a few drops of water, it really opens up and it tastes much better. But yeah, going with a bench, a big thank you over to Brandon at Lone Elm. Nice name, by the way, buddy. But Lone Elm for sending this over. Single barrel Texas straight wheat whiskey. So this is distilled from grain in Forney, Texas. Not fornicating, but Forney, Texas. Again, on 133 proof single barrel. I wonder what the small batch would taste like, or at least in between what they proof that down to. But it's very good. We've got another bottle from Lone Elm to try. That's a honey finish. I think it's a little lower in the proof, and I'd like to see how those rate back to back. But yeah, definitely some good stuff there. So again, thank you to our friends over at Lone Elm for sending this over to BNB to give us that review. And don't forget that you can head on over to Whiskey Weather, to Whiskey Towers to get that rating. Damn, I'm all thrown up. I'm just so overwhelmed with this whiskey. Yeah, go to whiskeytowers.com. to get 10% off your order. Use promo code Whiskey Weather. So before we jump into the baseball portion, I just got back from the Kentucky Bourbon Fest. And you need to plan on going next year. That's all I'm going to say.
All right.
So it was a
Can you
3-day.
slip me in with the VIP section with you?
So
or am I
here's
going to be
the deal.
watching you from the outside?
You look like you have a great time, Brandon. I wish I could have a good time.
So I had to pay $600 for the VIP pass there, pal. So you pay for the VIP.
I'm sure you didn't. I'm surprised you didn't win it because
No, they don't give it away. But we made some good connections with some different distilleries. Met the guys over at Lucky 7, JP and Michael. Great people. You'll like Michael. He's got the same name. But he actually really reminded me of my stepdad. And you met my stepdad a couple of weeks ago. But Kentucky Bourbon Fest, there's a craft section. There is a regular, just normal distillery, like the larger distillery section. The craft was a place to be. There was a lot more distilleries there. There was a lot more people around there, but it was really cool. We tried I think I tried 55, 60 different whiskeys in the 3-day span that I was there. Thursday night was Bourbon in the Air. So it was kind of like the VIPs got an extra couple of hours to check it out without the massive crowds there, just a couple hundred people. I'd say more romantic, good food, good drinks, good people. Yeah, there was no candlelight, but that's the thing about this, though, is we talk about the whiskey, and a lot of the times that's like the highlight of the episode, but I think it's more so the people in the whiskey, right? The distillers you get to talk to, their story, but also the influencers and the people.
That's how our friends are American Mash and Grain, how they're trying to tell people's stories, different distillery stories and the history, and like you're saying, the people involved in it.
Yeah. So if you've got a chance to check it out, go check out Kentucky Bourbon Fest. It's going to be the same weekend next year. So that's going to end up being the 14th, 15th, and 16th.
I'm busy.
Yeah, you're busy.
No.
You're going to be there. That's why. That's why you're busy.
That's why.
But a ton of great people, a great time. I got called Riff Raff at Bardstown Bourbon Company because we crashed their party. It was a disco party. They were all dressed like 80s disco people, 70s disco people. But you got to check out this hall. Look at all of that. So got some great bottles, met some great people, got some swag.
Good Lord.
Yeah, look at that. That one dude, Ryan, was there. He's as cool in person as he is on Instagram. If you haven't checked him out yet, you're missing a lot. But a lot of great stuff from Milam and Green. We're talking Penelope, Jake, EJ Curley, Green River, our friends over at Augusta Distillery. You know what really blew my mind? That bottle right there in the middle, just to the right, with the old like Scottish sash over it. I'm forgetting what the actual name of it is.
Kind of looks like a tie almost.
Almost. It's like a scarf, but we're going to get yelled at from all the Scotch people. So Kentucky Owl just dropped that bottle. It's called Meester, which means master in Gaelic. But all I could hear is, you remember the Meester lady?
That's exactly what I was thinking too. Matthew Gilmore. Get this off of me.
But we'll have a review of that because I got a bottle of that. I got to sit in and listen to Maureen, who was the master blender on that batch. It is a bourbon that is supposed to be blended to give you more of a Scotch feel. And I think it hit every note. We're going to have more on that later on. But overall, it's great people watching. It's great people meeting. Talk with people from Broken. Yeah. Broken Barrel. There was some lady who almost passed the F out. She like made it to the chair and just like slouched. But yeah, it was overall, there was 45, 50 people from Instagram that we've talked to for the last year and a half. So it was a real cool experience. And I'm extremely glad that I got to go. And you're going to have to come down, or I guess come up for your way. It's going down. I love to go down. I love to go down to Bardstown. But you're going to have to come up to Bardstown next year. So that is going to be September 14th, 15th, and 16th. So as we jump into the next stage of our podcast, we like to have trivia between our bourbon and our baseball. But here's what's different about this week. We've got a new face who's going to be joining us this week. And we welcome in Wes at BNB_Wes on Instagram. What's going on, buddy?
What's up, fellas? My mouth is watering a little bit. Now that listening to you between peanuts, walnuts,
I'm
really
interested. Michael's all about his nuts.
Yeah. Happy to be part. So
yeah, so we always use trivia as our like buffer between the whiskey and the baseball. So the question for you guys is: there are two players in Astros history who have 200 or more hits in a season. Who are those players?
200 Astros with 200
Craig
hits
Biggio?
or more.
In a season. And what was that, Wes?
I'm gonna go Craig Biggio, number 1.
Okay.
All right, let me give number 2 for you. Let's go Lance Berkman.
Okay. Is that your
Killer
final
bees
answer?
right there. So I know Craig Biggio's right. The
Okay,
second
Craig Biggio.
one, I want to say Lance Berkman, the dude who was hitting like in the 320s, 330s when his time with the Astros. I want to say, but I'll let Wes give a second guess.
You have a second guess?
I mean, I feel like the easy answer is the low hanging fruit's Altuve, but I don't know that he ever got 200.
Anybody have a final answer? Are we done? Or are we going to lock in our guesses?
I'll go with Biggio and Berkman. He can have.
I'll go Biggio, Altuve.
And welcome, newcomer. West 2 for 2. Michael Burns batting 50%, just about as always. Altuve's done it 4 times. 14, 15, 16, and 17. Wow. Biggio only did it once in 1998. I would have expected Biggio to have a lot more than that. But yeah, I guess it's hard to get 200 hits in this day and age. Not as much as it was a little bit longer ago. I guess launch angle, but still the fact that Altuve's done it. And didn't he just hit, his 200th or was it 300th home run earlier this year? I don't remember what the number was. Maybe it was 250. But that is our podcast trivia question. Real quick, before we jump into baseball, you guys collect ticket stubs when you went to the game growing up?
Still got them.
Yeah, Michael, I know you still got them. There's an app for that now, right? So have you ever wondered, okay, I was at this game, maybe Tom Glavine pitched. How did he do? Or what did Chipper Jones do? Being that Wes is a Braves fan. App called AC Memento. It's Memento Live Sports Scrapbook. What you do is you enter in. So if you still have those ticket stubs or if you know the games that you've been to, you enter in that information. And I think it's every date since 1993. But they're going to continue to add the information into their app as they continue to grow their database. But you get the beta testing of this via our podcast because they are so kind that they gave us a code, Bourbon Baseball, all underscore. So go check that out. That's in your Apple as well as Android stores. But you plug all this information in, and over time, it'll tell you, okay, you've seen the Braves play 27 times, and they are currently 12 and 15 in those games that you've seen them play. Chipper Jones bats 362 in games that you've seen, or he's hit 7 home runs in games that you've been at. So it's cool. It gives you all the statistics, or at least that's their plan down the road. But the listeners of Barrels and Barrels of Bourbon Baseball podcast get the beta part of this done for free using promo code Bourbon Baseball. That is all lowercase. So if you haven't downloaded that app yet, I know Trey Cortez down in Texas. Oh, he loves Lone Elm, by the way. And I got Trey, I've been meaning to say thank you, but I've got your box of samples. I have not gotten to it yet because, as you heard, Kentucky Bourbon Fest was a riot. But I know Trey has already friended me on this. Michael, you're on it. Wes, you're up next. But everybody else, if you're out there and you've got those old ticket stubs, or like I've got a dumb memory. I know games that I've been to that Frank Thomas hit a home run into the upper deck at this stadium, and I can Google it. But you can enter that in your sports scrapbook, and it'll give you all the information that you need. And that's not just baseball, but that's football, basketball, hockey, anything you've ever been to. And they're adding NCAA football games as well as basketball games down the road as well. So it's a full passport if you think about it. Something pretty cool there. Speaking of pretty cool, baseball is pretty cool. And that's why we're here in this part of the episode. But the best player in baseball is done for the year.
Yeah, that's
Sad
really it's a I'm not saying sad, but a disappointing end of the year for Ohtani, who's on a contract year, it was talks of making $500 million. And for
if
him,
not more.
like right, Aaron Judge bet on himself and won. Ohtani,
there's the patented Michael throat clear. Sorry.
Let me get all out of the way. Judge bet on himself and won. Ohtani didn't really bet on himself. He is just on his contract year. And he was having a great year like Aaron Judge did in his contract year. And now suddenly it's all crumbling down in front of him. I don't know if it could finish any worse. What do you think?
Wes?
Man, it's tough for baseball. I mean, he's the guy that everybody pays attention to, right? He's the superstar. And I don't know that it could have ended any worse for baseball. Just the way the Angels handled it, and the injury, him not being able to finish the season. We wanted to see him in the playoffs. We're not going to get to see that now. We might not have seen that anyways, but yeah, that's just
let's be real. Let's be real.
Yeah.
It was the Angels.
Yeah, so that's just tough. I hope he comes back and is healthy at least enough to hit next year, because he is that superstar and he commands a lot of attention, and it's good for baseball. So
yeah,
he's sad to see it that way.
It's definitely sad because he was also on the path for potentially the best season we've ever seen by a player, right? Not only at the plate, but on the mound. Yeah, add to it. And they say he's supposed to be back for opening day next year as a DH, wherever he signs. But as we go forward, I mean, pitching, that's still a question mark as we get past next year. He's supposed to be back in 2025 to start.
Yep.
But that's the second time, TJ.
How old it's the second Tommy John. He got here in 2018 and then 2019.
So he's just turned 29. He'll be 30 when he returns as a pitcher. What do you think that contract looks like, though?
I think it's going to be nobody. Man, that's tough. I don't see a team signing him long term, and I don't see him agreeing to anything long term until he gets back on the mound. I think he's probably going to sell himself short if he signs something long term right now. So if anything, it's probably going to be like a 1 year with 2 options, or a 2 year with a 1 option.
You almost wonder if it's almost like a Carlos Correa, Manny Machado one, where it is like a 5-6 year, or 4, 5, 6 year, but with option outs, player options at years 1, 2, and 3. I mean, would you be mad if Ohtani signed with your team, but hey, in 2 years he opted out? I don't think you'd be mad. You'd be happy to have him for his younger years and then have him opt out. Okay, that might be okay, actually.
So my thing is, I'm on both sides of the fence here, so it's kind of a weird thought. So he's 29, so he's still relatively young. But if he opts out after 2 or 3 years, he's at that like age point where you're not signing players to 8-9 year deals.
Right.
But the fact that he had the surgery, that was the question. Was he going to go through the offseason and try to do the old PRP, is that what they call it? Injections again, and try to tough through it? Or what was the deal there? So now there's some clarity on the fact that he's had the surgery. He can recover from it. We've seen players do the 2 Tommy John thing and come back from it. It's not as common as the one time, but if you look 10 years ago, that would be the death sentence. And now it's more and more common to see players come back. So part of me goes, a team may be desperate enough to just say, we'll give you 10 years, because no matter what, we know we're going to make that investment back just because of who you are. And we're going to pull some money from Japan, from overseas. And you're getting thousands of players coming into your ballpark. So you're theoretically going to be making more money. How many 17 Cubs jerseys or 17 Braves jerseys? I know the Braves probably aren't going to be a team that in on, but if the Yankees signed them, everybody's buying a jersey. The Red Sox, everybody. Seattle, if he goes to LA, like jersey sales, he's going to be the number 1 jersey sale, because anybody in that organization, like who cheers for that organization, is buying that jersey. So you're theoretically making that money up right off the bat. But also, does he want to settle for maybe $450 over 10 years, where he had the potential for $600 over 10 years or $660 over 11 years?
Sheesh.
It's one of the most unique cases I think we're ever going to see in free agency, because I could very well see him do a 1 year prove it deal. Like, hey, get healthy. If I were him, I'd rather be a free agent after 1 year than after 2 or 3, because now you're older. Even though you're back to pitching, that's still a question mark after 2 or 3 years.
So do you feel like he might do a 1 year deal and rush back and try and pitch in late August, September of next year?
See, a normal Tommy John recovery's what, 12, 13, 14 months?
13 months, yeah.
And then I've seen that like the second Tommy John's more of a 17, 18 deal. So I don't see him pitching at all next year, just because 18 months from now, that's where we're looking at opening day of 2025.
And the fact
Right.
that he'll be hitting still. He won't be able to sit out and focus on just pitching.
Right. But the fact that they're saying he'll be back for opening day of 2025, that's a decent timeline. But the Yankees are saying that Jason Dominguez isn't going to be back for 2 or 3 months halfway through the season. And he's having the same surgery within the same timeline. He's 7 years younger.
That's true. But let me throw this at you. As his agent, you're trying to sign him for the most money, and he's the one that put out the news, right? I mean, if I'm his agent, not that I'm going to fluff the numbers, but I'm going to say, hey, Bryce Harper came back in 9 months, so we're going to put 9 months on it.
Yeah. Bryce even came back quicker than that, didn't he? Wasn't it 6 months or so, from November to May, or November to mid-May? So was it 7? Okay, thank you, Mr. Math Major. But he did it at Thanksgiving, which was late Thanksgiving and late November, and then he came back like the first week of May.
Just say November to May is 7 months.
November 1st to May 1st would be
Cheers.
7 months. Yeah, cheers. Happy first anniversary. We still have bitterness towards each other. So what did you guys think of the old cleaned out his locker? Think too much was made out of it?
Yeah.
He's got so many eyes on him for every little move he makes. Oh, he wiped forward instead of backward this time. What is the meaning of that?
I didn't know they had cameras in that. Now we're talking lawsuits.
I'm sure he does.
Yeah. Oh.
Well,
yeah.
He's back in the dugout, so I think it was all made out for nothing. He's a free agent at the end of the year. Yeah,
it could have been that he was just pissed off that his elbow and the year is ending how it is.
Yeah, do you blame him?
What? No, not at all. I mean, he was looking, like you said, you just said, he was looking at 650 possibly, and now he probably. I mean, he could see that collectively over 2 deals, but he won't see that in one mega deal.
No, and that mega deal was going to be the security, because he only signed a 4 or 5 year deal. He's not getting another big deal behind that. But the season he had just as a hitter, 151 hits, which amounted to 44 bombs, 304 for a batting average, OBP 412, slugging 654, OPS 1066. His OPS plus 184, and that doesn't even take into account. Well, he had 20 stolen bases, but that doesn't take into account any of his pitching statistics either, which he was a bona fide ace or number 2. He was the ace of the Angels because they don't have shit. But any other team, he'd be a top 2 starter, maybe the ace, depending on who else you've got in your rotation. And he did that all while being the best hitter in the league. So that's probably the saddest thing, is we didn't get to see a full year. Would he have made it to 60? Probably not. But I think he would have been close. There was a point where Mikey and I were looking at it, and he was on pace for the same numbers that Judge had last year, but with better batting average as well as better on base percentage.
We were talking Triple Crown.
Yeah. And that was on the batting side, not even the pitching added to it. So it's sad. It sucks because we missed on it. So now the question I would pose to you guys, does this open the door for Corey Seager to win the NAL MVP, or do you still think it's Shohei?
Yeah, I still think it's Shohei. I mean, it is just so hard to vote against what he did, even missing the time at the end of the season. It's so hard to vote against that. I'm sorry.
I do think Corey Seager is being underplayed in a sense of what he's done in the short time. He missed the first month and a half, 2 months.
And then he had another stint on the IL.
I mean, the dude's batting 340, hitting 20-something home runs. He's having an amazing season. That if he did have the full season, I think, yes, Corey Seager would be overtaking him. But I think Ohtani has that special Ohtani effect that will get the voters on his side a little bit more, just because of the two-way player. If he wasn't a two-way player and we're just talking hitter to hitter, I think Seager will come up and get him.
Yeah, I'd agree.
But the fact that you're getting two different positions out of one player, especially a pitcher. When we saw how many pitchers get destroyed,
Starting
good
pitcher.
pitchers. Yeah, good. How many good pitchers this year got destroyed, and Ohtani didn't. So
I still think it's Ohtani slam dunk. I agree with Wes. OPS 176 for Seager. Ohtani's 184. Or sorry, OPS plus. OPS, Ohtani 1066, Seager 1034. Slugging 654 Ohtani, 640 for Corey Seager. On base percentage, Ohtani's got him by just about 20 points. He's got 10 times the amount of steals that Seager has. He's driven in just about the same. But that Texas lineup's a lot more stacked on a day-to-day basis than the Angels have been. Ohtani's got him by 13 home runs, and he's only played at least at bats, but only 60 plus more than Seager. So it's not like he has a terrible amount of at bats more than Seager has. Their batting average definitely weighs in the Seager's favor, but even Ohtani scored 102 runs. So Seager's 84. Ohtani's WAR 10 on B WAR. Seager's 6.8. So it's not even close in my mind. But I think some people are going to try to say he was on a team that didn't make the playoffs. So Texas might not even make the playoffs.
no.
It's just upsetting to me that the Angels couldn't surround him with more talent.
Yeah.
And Trout, for that matter.
That's been the case for what?
They had the best two players and never made the playoffs for how many years?
I think they're
14,
on year
15?
13. Yeah. 14. Yeah.
2014 was the year I think that they went to the playoffs and they got swept in 3 games. And so Trout has never won a playoff game. Speaking of a team that hasn't really done well in the playoffs, but they consistently at least make the playoffs, the Tampa Bay Rays. Actually, the 2 biggest stories in the last week of baseball are all off the field stories. So Shohei off the field, Tampa Bay Rays off the field because they're building a new stadium or they're proposing a new stadium. And we turn to our expert Tampa Bay Rays analyst, Wes, live in Tampa Bay. What's the word you're hearing?
So the local news stations, you'll love this, Brandon, are all about it. I mean, they're eating it up. Okay. And I will say this first. It's good for baseball. It's good for the Rays. I'm not going to hold my breath for a few reasons. The first time it was proposed in Ybor City. You guys probably don't know where Ybor City is. It's Tampa side. It would have been a great place. The renderings were ugly, but they worked. That fell through, which led us to this whole debacle. We saw some things with the A's when they proposed a new stadium. I'll wait to see us closer to the finish line before I really say anything bad, but I'm happy for the Rays. I'm happy for baseball. I think it pushes them in the right direction, and hopefully we can get it moving pretty quickly. I'm upset it's not Tampa instead of St. Pete, but I understand why they kept it in St. Pete. I understand the historic value. I understand the draw that it has there. If you guys don't know, that's where the Dodgers and Branch Rickey originally settled the first minor league team. And there's a baseball museum there. So I love the historical value, but they're really missing out by not being able to get it over in Tampa somewhere. But it would be more expensive over here. So I get it. But it's just really going to suck to cross the Howard Franklin to get to a game. That's really going to suck.
Is that really do you think the biggest factor when it comes to lower attendance is the ballpark placement rather than just the team being bad?
2 things. Number one in my mind is the current situation of the stadium. It's a dump. I'm sorry.
That's
I
someone who
there.
works for the, I was going to
say, I worked there and I did rounds around that stadium hundreds of times. It's just not a good stadium. Okay. It's very old. A lot of the bathrooms don't work, but I think that's number one. Number 2 is the traffic. And I'll tell you a very short story. When the Rays were playing the Yankees in the first round, Garrett Cole was pitching. And I think that was, you have to remind me the year. I think it was 17 or 18.
Probably 19, because I think Cole signed.
It was 19.
Yeah.
Yeah. So we left work in Tampa at 4 p.m. on the dot. First pitch was at 7:05. We missed first pitch in the first half of the top of the first
Wow.
half. We didn't get into our seats until the bottom of the first. And that is 100% the drive from, and we were in downtown Tampa. So we went straight from downtown Tampa to Tropicana, and it took us 3 hours. So yeah, I would say
Gross.
And that's what, like 20 miles maybe?
Yeah, that's probably roundabout.
So it's not terribly far. I mean, that's the same distance, Michael, that it was from my house to Wrigley Field. And that took us in traffic about an hour and 10, an hour and 15.
Right.
Oh, that's rough. That's what I've always heard. I haven't been to the Trop yet. My goal is to get there, but maybe I won't because this opens in their goal is to get there by the opening day of 2028. So we've got basically 4 years. That's a quick turn.
Oh, shoot.
The renderings look pretty cool. Obviously, renderings are renderings, and you're not going to know until they actually build the damn thing. The interior still kind of looks a little warehousey, but obviously renderings. I'm excited. I'd rather see Tampa stay in Tampa because I think that there is a pretty good baseball. You worked for the Lightning as well. You saw what fans and what the residents did and rally around them with that big open air.
Oh yeah.
Outdoor like venue that they just packed outside the stadium, not just inside the stadium. And that every time I watch a Lightning playoff game, that place is rocking. So it's not that the Tampa Bay fans are bad. I just think they're not making it to the Trop because it's a little more difficult to get to. And that's what, again, the saddest part out of all of this, and that's the thing that scares me the most out of it, is it still is in St. Pete. But not knowing the historical value of that, now that you've mentioned it, like I like the fact that it's there, and I just hope that somehow Tampa and St. Pete would be able to work some different infrastructure to help people get there. I guess would be.
They are trying. I will give them credit. They are building an addition to the Howard Franklin, which I believe is going to be 3 or 4 lanes, and they're moving pretty quickly on it. I can't say that was strictly for the Rays, but
Right.
It's just that traffic between St. Pete and Tampa is that bad. But you're right. I mean, I will give Tampa this credit. If you go to a Lightning game or you go to a Bucks game, even when the Bucks before Brady, it's sold out, man. Like people here love sports, and if the Trop was in a location where they could access it more readily and easier, yeah, that stadium would be filled constantly. So I'm hoping that the new stadium will at least solve one of the problems. Hopefully we can find ways to solve the second problem, which is traffic.
Yeah. And that could be just over time. But the Tampa Bay, it's not like they've been a crap franchise either. Since what? The early Joe Madden kind of turned them around. When they first started, they were like the doormat. When they expanded, obviously that happens with expansion teams, but for a low budget team, they consistently find themselves in contention. They've already clinched a playoff spot. And speaking of playoff spot, they did that along with the Baltimore Orioles. The Baltimore Orioles had the big lead in the division by 2 games. I say big lead because just the other day it was tied. And they've taken that back. One of the funner divisions to watch all year because they've had some of the best teams. Every team until the other day was at or above 500 for a majority of the season. But the Baltimore Orioles, man, they look like a powerhouse. They lost today to Houston, but they took the first 2 games. They clinched. What's different about this Orioles team than maybe when we saw them in 2016 when they last went, and that was the Buck Showalter and Zach Britton left in the bullpen kind of year?
I think it's almost, from what I remember, Zach Britton was that guy. And we've seen that graphic that came out recently about if one run games were reversed, what would the standings look like? And you see a very different type of standings with that one run flipped. And right now the Orioles have this powerhouse offense, but I think they're lacking in the rotation. They have a powerhouse closer in Felix Bautista, who is having a Cy Young type year for the Orioles. Hold
on. You just say Cy Young?
Yes.
You think he would have really won the Cy Young if he pitched the whole season?
No.
Okay.
No. Cy Young type of year for a closer. The dude was electric. I mean, you can see the stats here on the screen. 61 innings, 110 strikeouts, 1.48 ERA. And then my favorite stat there, the whip. Way below 1. That means the guy was giving up walks, hits. What'd I say?
I said Michael likes the whip.
Oh, I thought I said it wrong. I was like, oh.
No. I was just talking about your kinks. Going back to Felix.
But yeah, Felix Bautista, unfortunately for the Rays, has been out since August 26th with a partial tear in his UCL. So Orioles immediately thinking that he's done for the year. He's done for most of next year. It screams Tommy John. But there's news.
Yeah,
they've seen Felix Bautista throwing bullpens on the field, not on the field, but in the bullpen here lately, showing that maybe he'll be ready for playoffs. And I think that's huge for the Orioles.
I mean, they had the best, I think, back end of a bullpen with Cano, and then stuck in Cubs world with Canario, but Cano and then to Bautista. I hope he's healthy, and I hope he doesn't come back and just blow it and then lose all of next year because of it. But yeah, I mean, the Orioles have the offense, they have the back end. I'm just scared about the rotation.
Yes, absolutely. Agreed.
What do you think, Wes?
Yeah, I got to agree about the rotation. You're kind of hoping that Grayson Rodriguez can be that guy, that front end guy. He's been much better in the second half. Kyle Bradish, look, I guess we got to give Bradish his credit, right? I mean, he's been their most consistent starter pretty much all year
today too.
Yeah, I mean, he's been awesome. He doesn't have elite stuff, but he finds a way to get the job done. They scare me in a 3-game series, but with the way the playoffs are now, it's 5-7 games. They don't have that front end guy, and I think that's the one thing they're missing. That's not to say that Grayson Rodriguez can't come out and give them 6 or 7, and then or even 5 and turn it over to their bullpen the way that it is. But in today's game, I think the stronger bullpens typically go further into the playoffs. But I just don't. In a 5-7 game series, I don't see them going very deep. They might win 1-2 games, and games 5, 6, 7, having your guys, your one who I assume is going to be Bradish, and 2 who I assume is going to be Grayson Rodriguez, going in those games. That's tough. That's tough to commit to.
And experience too. These guys, these are young guys who don't have playoff experience, going up against Justin Verlander, who has all the playoff experience in the world.
Framber, half that Astros roster. They've been this deep year in and year out for the last 6-7 years. What about John Means? He just came back. Do you think it's enough to lengthen at least that rotation? They put Flaherty in the bullpen, did they?
No, I don't know. I know Flaherty
on their depth chart. He's listed as a bullpen arm. I haven't watched a whole lot of Orioles baseball. To be honest, I haven't watched a ton of Orioles baseball.
One day ago, Orioles reduced rotation to 5 starters by changing Flaherty's role.
Yeah,
Flaherty's moved to the bullpen.
I wonder if he's okay with that and if he's going to throw a fit. But you've got Means, Gibson, Bradish, Kramer, and then Grayson Rodriguez. Kramer's been decent, hasn't he, this year? Overall,
he's been good. I think he was.
I think you can say that about most of their starters, right? They've all their whole rotation has been serviceable. They've kept them in games long enough for their offense to win the ball game for them.
Yeah, and they've got one of the better bullpens in the league. It'll be interesting because the games get shorter and shorter in the playoffs when it comes to pitching, right? You go to your bullpen quicker, and you start to blow your load a little bit more, at least earlier with your bullpen arms, and you ride your bullpen arms. And that's another thing is Bautista going to be able to go on back-to-back days or 3 games in 4 days because he's got that partial UCL tear, or is that going to limit there are options. Like, do we hold him out today because we know we're going to need him in potentially Game 7 2 days from now?
Just like they did with Zach Britton. They held him,
Yeah.
and he didn't pitch the entire playoffs in 2016. Their best pitcher.
Yeah, well, not the entire playoffs. It was a wild card game. They had one game winner. You're winning. You're into the next round, and they didn't pitch him. And that's probably, I bet you, Buck Showalter's biggest regret in his career as a manager is that, because that was the big talk for months after that. But the Orioles, they're clinching their first playoff spot in 7 years. It's fun. I think it's made baseball very fun this year to see them. 78-win team last year. They're the best team in the American League, not just the best in their division, like the best record in the AL right now belongs to the Baltimore Orioles. And I like the parity. I love to see different teams make it year in and year out. And they're a young, fun, exciting team that, since I'm an NL sided guy, I'll be rooting for Baltimore.
Right. And what's even scarier is they've called up and graduated all these different kids. And Wes, what's their system rated still after all these graduates? Still number one.
I mean,
probably behind Jackson insane. Holiday, right?
Yeah, Jackson Holiday.
It's funny you mention him.
Yeah, Michael likes to get off during these parts of the podcast when we talk about Jackson Holiday. So let's take your 30 seconds.
I can't believe he's not up. I understand he hasn't been hitting. He's had his first hiccup and his first bump in the road in AAA, batting .265. Poor guy, he's 20 years old, hitting in AAA.
Did he turn
still
20?
think he could be an asset? Is he 20? I think he's 20.
I think he's still 19.
I thought he was still 19. He must have just turned 20 if that's the case. Oh, that's so insane.
Michael's just trying
19.
to get him to
he's
21.
19.
Yeah, Michael's just trying to get him to 21 so we can have him on the
podcast.
Yeah. We'd have to get extra box of Kleenex for Michael if that was the case. Not because he'd be crying, folks. But yeah, they've got the best record. Moving on. That's a ground rule double. That saves a run. There it goes into the Cubs broadcast. We'll get to the Cubs here in a second. The best team in the NL. We're going to just quickly squirt right past them because one of the guys here on the podcast is a Braves fan. No, the Atlanta Braves, they clinched a playoff spot. They clinched the NL East. They've been the best team for a majority of the year. There have been a couple times where I think the Orioles were overall better at the time, but from start to finish, the Braves have been the best team. They've got the deepest lineup. They've clinched. But did they go party hardy in Miami? The city to party hardy?
Judging by our record over the last few days and the way we've played against the Phillies, I'm going to say, yeah, you're probably right. They went a little too hard with the party in Miami.
They're still a little hungover.
I saw a statistic earlier this morning and said the Braves have given up 4 home runs in a game 10 times this year. 7 of them have been in the last 3 weeks.
Oh my gosh.
Talk about coasting.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, but bullpen hasn't been great the last few days, which that's kind of upsetting.
So as a Braves fan, does that scare you going into the playoffs?
Yeah.
Or do you think this is just let's just get right kind of moment?
What scares me is that our bullpen has been up and down all year. There was, I think, a stretch between, it might have been June, July, or July, August, where we had the best bullpen by ERA. But I feel confident in Iglesias. I feel confident in a few other guys, but I just don't feel like we don't have the same bullpen as the Orioles. Like, you look at the Orioles player by player, and you're like, they beat us in the bullpen on pretty much every player, right? Mm-hmm. Like, are you taking Iglesias or are you taking Batista? Like, I'm probably taking Batista, right? Are you taking Cano? And basically anybody in the Braves bullpen, I'm probably going to take Cano, right?
Would Minter be your number 2 behind that, or who are you going with?
I love Minter, but he's been Jekyll and Hyde this year. Mm-hmm. Command has kind of been a little all over the place. He just doesn't give me a warm fuzzy when he comes in the game, you know? So, yeah, I would say that's the one concern for the Braves. Obviously, we know what their offense can do. It's a historic offense, right? And that's what's won them a lot of games. Max Fried's blister or hotspot or whatever they called it, I guess, is a little concerning, but I think they're just trying to get him right for the playoffs.
Yeah.
Between him, Strider, Morton, it's going to be your 1, 2, 3, and then I assume Elder and I don't know that Kyle has enough innings yet for me to believe in him, but they got the one guy that is the best player in baseball right now, so it's kind of hard not to believe in that guy,
Yeah. Speaking of the best player in baseball, he's talking about Mookie Betts. Ronald Acuna Jr. I'm just kidding. Ronald Acuna Jr. doing something right now that has never been done before. With every home run and every stolen base, he sets a record. There has never, ever been a 40-70 season in Major League Baseball history, and he's about to do it. Most likely, unless he decides to take the next couple of weeks off. But it's 39 bombs, 67 stolen bases. He was the first player to ever have a 30-60 season. Now he is the first player to have a 39-67. But here's the thing. A couple of months ago, Michael and I were talking. We weren't sure he was going to make 35 home runs. He's had a hell of a month, a hell of a couple of weeks. He's going to reach 40 home runs before he reaches 70 stolen bases. And if you looked a month ago, that was not going to be the case. It would have been flip-flopped. So he's definitely trying to cement that. You think he's got it?
That was the moment. That was the moment that they said Mookie Betts is the MVP front runner, and Acuna said, "Excuse me."
He was at 29 bombs, yeah, and he's had what at this point 10 since then, just 3 weeks ago.
Yeah, I got a text message just yesterday, I think, when Acuna hit a bomb. I just get a text from Wes here, MVP, MVP, MVP.
It was his second home run, Burns. I just want to clarify. It was his second home run of the game.
So he's got 67 stolen bases. Real quick, I do want to shout out Esteury Ruiz. I don't know if you saw that. He became the first athletics player to have 60-plus stolen bases in a season since Rickey Henderson in 1998. So 25 years since that feat. Obviously, the rules changing this year have changed that a little bit, but cool on there. Let's jump back to the bullpens. The best two bullpens let's go with the best 5 bullpens in the last several weeks. Going back to September 1st, Tampa Bay 155, LA Dodgers 173, Milwaukee 2.14, Arizona 2.21, and Philly at 3.38. Go to the opposite side of the spectrum. The worst bullpen, Texas 6.39. The third worst, the Braves at 6.23. That's been since the start of September. As a Braves fan, for you, I would say that you're probably hoping that that's more so just because they've kind of let off the gas pedal a little bit since they clinched the division last week with half a month to play. But that I guess would scare me if I was a Braves fan. That would be the one, limiting factor.
It's definitely
go ahead.
It's definitely the number one concern. If the bullpen, obviously, but the fact that we're just kind of coasting, and playoff baseball, a lot of times is just about who gets hot at the right time, and we're certainly not getting hot at the right time.
Well, and don't look too far, but the Dodgers are only 3 games back right now for best record in the big leagues and best home field advantage, right? They've already clinched the NL West, but they're 93-57. Braves are 97-55. Dodgers have won 5 in a row, and they're playing the Detroit Tigers right now, scoreless in the bottom of the first as we watch. But all of a sudden, it's like object in mirror closer than it appears, right?
Yeah, very much so. They're coming up behind us pretty quickly. We haven't played great against the Phillies, so
Michael's right past that.
Pick up some steam before we get it. It gives me the heebie-jeebies.
Yeah,
I don't like it. I don't like watching it.
But what you do probably like watching is this guy, Matt Olson, just broke the single season home run record for Braves history. I would have guessed Henry Aaron at first, and then as I did the research, I was like, oh wow, Andrew Jones in 2005. But look at all the consistent years for Hank back in 57, 63, 66, 69, all of 44 home runs. And then you see Andres Galarraga in 1998, but Chopper Jones still in there as we're looking at that.
I made the correction. It just is not uploaded into here. Gosh darn it. I made the correction even.
But how special of a year, and how crazy is it that he is the season leader in home runs, the single season home run leader for the Braves. He's not anywhere close to the MVP conversation.
That I think the MVP is surprising to me that he's not getting more, at least, consideration. Very happy about the home runs. I'm, love it for Matt Olson. This is kind of the guy that we were hoping he could be when he came over from Oakland. But I mean, who would you? It's tough that he's not in the MVP conversation, but what a move by Anthopoulos, right? You got to give him credit. He made probably one of the toughest decisions ever as a GM to basically not offer Freddie, or not to say that he didn't offer it, but it wasn't what he wanted. And then he goes to LA knowing that he had Olson in his back pocket and then signs him to an extension. So yeah, when that happened, he kind of had a little bit of a rough year last year. So you're in the gray area. You like him, but you're not sure if he's going to hit 220 with 40 every year. So him coming out and doing what he did this year really kind of put him, for me, in the top 2-3 first baseman in the league. And the thing is, for him, he doesn't have to be the superstar on this team, right? So he can just go out and hit home runs. Even if he hits 230, he doesn't have to be a guy that hits 270, but he's surrounded by such great players that he does go out and hit 280. What's he at, 282 now, or 270?
He's at 279.
279 with 52 pumps in 118 runs. He's got 130 driven in, which leads the league. 609 slug too. Like, dude's having a year. 161 WRC plus. I mean, he should be in the MVP contention. That just tells you how good Mookie and Freddie have been on top of Acuna. So both teams have two potential MVP candidates. And real quick, as we jump back to Acuna doing something, another player who's done something really cool, Michael's other crush and man crush, Corbin Carroll, just today became the first rookie with 25 home runs and 50 stolen bases, as he got another stolen base, I think, against the Giants this afternoon. That's part of a team, this Diamondbacks team, man. I'm
surging.
Good Lord.
They couldn't have they couldn't have decided to surge like this at a worse time for me and Brandon.
Well, they had lost like 8 in a row through the first few games. I think they were
of August, right?
They
fell off our power rankings.
Yeah, and they have the 7th best record in September. Do you know real quick trivia question off the cuff? Do you know who has the best record in the month of September right now in all of baseball?
Are we talking all of baseball?
Yeah. I'm going to say the Miami Marlins.
What?
Phillies?
It is the San Diego Padres. A little too late. 13-5.
Yes, it is.
13-5, while Miami is 12-6. But on top of that,
no way, they're 5 games back of the Cubs right now in the wild card.
Yeah, that's how crazy it's been. They've caught up, but it's probably a little too late unless they win every game from here on out. But yeah, the Diamondbacks, his team, we saw them in person, Michael, twice. They've got one of the best pitchers who could potentially now be the Cy Young with Justin Steele imploding the last 2 games. But I'm ready to not see Corbin Carroll play my team again.
Yeah, Corbin Carroll is everything that the Diamondbacks were hoping that he would be, and maybe even more. For a rookie, I think this is what they were hoping to get Corbin Carroll as a seasoned
year 3,
veteran
4,
kind of
5,
guy.
right?
Exactly, and they're getting that as a rookie. Wes understands why I love the guy. I basically stole the guy in fantasy baseball from one of our friends, but the guy is just an electric player on the field and so much fun to watch, running around the bases. Him and Alec Thomas.
It's not fun unless he's playing against a team that's not your team.
No, right. I
wanted to pull my hair out in the freaking bleachers for 2 days.
Well, now what's frustrating is Alec Thomas, who looks just like him running around the bases. We were confusing him and Carroll when we were
not
sitting
just
in
on the bases,
field.
but at the plate, he looks identical. And one's 7 and one's 5. They look identical. They're like twins. But yeah, the D-backs, man. They have surged into that second wild card spot with another win today. They're 81-72. That NL wild card is crazy. This is what baseball wanted when they improved it to a 16 playoff, right? Rather than just a one-game wild card. Now you've got three teams make the wild card, 2 series in each division or in each league before you get to the divisional series. You've got Philly, who's pretty much locked up unless they were to fall off the face of the earth. But Arizona's won 5 in a row, one of the hottest teams in baseball, 81-72. The Cubs went from a 94% chance to make the playoffs. They're down to like 48%. They're losing to the Pirates right now at 79-72. They will still have the final wildcard spot after tonight, but 79-72, they'll probably fall to 79-73. The Marlins at 79-74, and then the Reds at 79-75, who actually hold the tiebreaker over the Cubs. So between those 4 teams, they're separated by 2.5 games. And then you look at the Giants, who are 2 games back to that, and then the Padres, who we wrote off, they're almost back to 500. That's where the Giants sit at 500. They're not eliminated yet, but that NL wildcard is crazy.
It's going to be fun final week of the season, and I hate what the Cubs' schedule is for the final week of the season. It's tough.
Yeah, it's extremely tough because they play the Braves and then the Brewers. The way the Braves have played lately is not quite as scary. And then I would assume the Brewers have locked up the NL Central by that point, so hopefully you're getting them in kind of a let's reset our rotation. I've said it last week on a podcast. I'm going to say it again, and I'm going to try to put out my point, Wes. If I'm a team in the wild card race, I want to be that 6 seed. I don't want to be a 4 or 5 because no matter whether you're 4 or 5, you got to play the Braves in the next round, and the Braves are going to be able to stack their rotation the way they want it. They're going to have their team rested, whether that's 3 or 4 games. As a Cubs fan, I want number 6 seed because we fill Milwaukee Stadium. We've beaten Milwaukee on a consistent basis this year. I think it's a 500 record right now against the Brewers. So that final series will determine the tiebreaker, but there's not going to be a tiebreaker because the Brewers are going to get that division. And then on top of that, you win that, you face the Dodgers. And right now, I couldn't tell you who the Dodgers starting 5 past Lance Lynn is. You go Clayton Kershaw, Lance Lynn. Lance Lynn's your number 2. He was your number 5 a couple of weeks ago, and he's given up like 13 runs in 16 innings this month. Then Bobby Miller, I'm sure he's passed his career high in innings. Ryan Yarbrough, and I couldn't tell you who the 5th starter is. Pepio. Yeah. Pepe Le Pew. Is that his name?
Yeah. Man, I'm going to tell myself a little bit here. When MLB did this, I was not for it. I was angry. I said Manfred was a terrible commissioner. I'll be honest.
He still is. He
still is. Yeah, well, he still is. I'm not saying that's changed. I'm just saying he might have gotten this one right. I mean, because
we're going to give Theo. No, we're going to give Theo the credit for this one.
Yes.
Well, you might be right there. Yeah. We'll give Theo the credit, but you're right, man. I would rather be a 6 seed and have to play the Dodgers than be the 6 seed and have to play the Braves. That kind of works out weird for me. I thought it would be the 4-5 versus the 2, or the 6-3 versus the 1, or maybe it would be a 6-3. Like, I don't know. That just feels weird, right?
Yeah. So that's the difference between some playoffs and the MLB is they don't reseed after they win. So you have to always assume that the 3 seed's going to win and the 4 seed's going to win. So the 1 plays the 4 and the 2 plays the winner of the 3-6. So if you are the 6 seed, you've got a better, and that's what the Phillies did last year, right? The Braves were the 2 seed. They beat the Braves, and then they went on and played a battered Padres team at that point who had beat the number 1s. There was a 5 versus a 6, and that's exactly what they wanted last year. It's going to be a wild NL wildcard race. There's 10 games left for most of these teams, if not 9. This weekend is going to really be a big deal for a lot of these teams going into that final week. The Cubs are in a rough spot because they're going on the road for the final 6 games, where I believe the Reds have one of the easiest schedules. They play Cleveland and then St. Louis next week for 5 games. And then this weekend they're playing the Pirates. So the Reds kind of have it set up for that final wild card spot. as Milwaukee has to play the Miami has to play the Brewers, but that's in Miami. So as a Cubs fan right now, not thrilled, especially with how they petered down the stretch. But speaking of another team, as we were just talking about, the Reds, not only are they within contention, they're a game and a half out, but Joey Votto, he just continues to rake, right? He's back off the IL, but the big news was, is he going to retire at the end of the year? I've gotten emails at work. I'm in Cincinnati. They're getting file footage in the case that Joey does retire. What are your guys' thoughts on that?
I mean, the dude's been around as long as I can remember. It seems like I don't remember a time when Joey Votto wasn't in the league. He's been in the league, what?
2011? Was that his rookie year? 2010?
I want to say at least 2010. That's when the Reds were. I remember when the Reds were really good and owned the division.
So he came up in 07. 07. He was an all-star and MVP in 2010. So that was his MVP year.
I think I remember him in the 09 season having a great year against the Phillies when the Phillies won the World Series in 09. And I think 09's where he kind of put himself on the map, at least for me.
Yeah, OPS was 981 that year.
I just don't know that the Reds have room for him next year. I mean, they're already talking about in the middle of this year, trading their leader of the clubhouse, Jonathan India, because they didn't have room. And I don't know that they have room for Joey Votto. And if you're Joey Votto and you've played, 17 years with the Reds, a single team, do you go play 1-2 years? Do you Brett Favre it, Aaron Rodgers it, and go play for another team for a year or two just to milk your baseball career out? Or do you walk into the sunset with your head high?
That would be tough. If I'm him, I would have to retire. If the Reds don't want me back, which would be very tough for that organization to say that they don't want Joey back in some fashion. Man, that would be tough for me. I think I would have to retire. Like, you spend that long with one team. There's very few players in history that have done something like that, right? Like, you think of Chipper Jones, you think of Jeter, right? Yeah. Like, those guys are legends more than just they're playing the field. You don't think of Derek Jeter as a Red Sox or you think of Derek Jeter, he's a Yankee.
Right.
Right. You think of Chipper Jones, he's a Brave. You think of Joey Votto, he's a Red. Right? Like, it would be very hard to see him in any other uniform. But he can get a job in baseball anywhere, all right? MLB needs to give him a job as the ambassador because he's top two personalities in the MLB right now.
Oh, yeah. Here's a name to throw out there. Frank Thomas.
White Sox.
Yeah, but he played for the Toronto Blue Jays, almost won an MVP, and then he finished with the Oakland A's. So it has been done before. I don't think he's the money kind of like chaser, but also I'm going to throw this out there. I think the Reds would be stupid not to re-sign him for a couple of reasons. Who is the veteran presence on that team? You don't have one.
Yeah.
Jonathan India, and that's a child compared to that.
And he was Rookie of the Year in 2021. So this is his third season. India is not even yet into arbitration. So can you call him a veteran yet? He's not even made it to arbitration.
No.
Next year will be his first arbitration year. You're not going to have to. And here's the thing. I don't think Joey's going to be like, hey, give me $20 million. I think Joey'd be fine being like, hey, give me 3-4. Let me be a spot starter at first, a spot starter at DH. Let me be a veteran presence in that clubhouse because they're going to need it. They're already trotting out 5 rookies right now, right? When McLean's healthy, but you got McLean, you got Marte, you got CES, you've got Spencer Steer and Ellie. Those are 5 players. Senzel's probably not going to come back, or if he is, he's going to be a spot starter. You've got a lot of youth on the team. You've got Fraley, you've got Friedel, who aren't studs. They're not veterans. They're pieces to a team. I think you'd be stupid if you were the Reds not to re-sign him. Maybe do that Albert Pujols swan song season. Talk to him and be like, hey, I know this isn't going to be like, who knows? Nobody thought Pujols was going to have the year he had last year in St. Louis.
Right.
Like he
Right.
had nothing in his final years with LA Angels, and then when he got to the Dodgers,
The Dodgers.
he had a couple spurts here or there with the Dodgers, but it wasn't like he was tearing the cover off the ball. And then he became almost an MVP candidate last year with the Cardinals. So maybe you get that 1 year resurgence from Joey. Like, hey, I know this is my final year. I'm going to give you everything I got. He's only 40 years old. So I say only, like we've seen players play past that age and still be productive. 1 year, maybe a 1 year with a player option. Like say, hey, Joey, we're going to give you 2 years. You make the decision whether you want to play past this year, but we're giving you that role. How many years has that team been competitive with him on it though? Right, like 09 and 2010, and then
2.
Yeah, 2020. That playoff season was like they won 31 and 29. It's not like they were the best team in baseball. They won a playoff spot just because the expanded playoffs for COVID rules. I think he wants a chance to play on a team or be part of a team that's competitive, but I think he wants to do it in Cincinnati. And with that arrow going up, this is the best case scenario for Joey to kind of have that age 40 season where he doesn't have to be the guy, where he can be the leader and the mentor again, to just try and potentially make a swan song like Cinderella run.
Yeah. That's a good point that Joey Votto hasn't been on winning teams since his first few years in the league. And that he just wants to, I mean, the Reds with the rotation, if the rotation could be healthy, if Hunter Green could be healthy, and now that who's the guy that came up and made the impact this year? Abbott.
And then you got Lodolo if he ever gets healthy, potentially.
Those are 3 top of the rotation guys.
And throwing Graham Ashcraft, who has say that way too fast. Ashcraft, who you could potentially have the number 4, who I think he's had the better second half. I think he's got like a 2-something ERA in the second half.
Yeah. Since he came back from injury, Ashcraft's been pretty good.
Yeah.
I think he's been their best pitcher. And Abbott's kind of fallen off, but Abbott's hit a little bit of an innings wall.
Right.
You know, Connor Phillips did just come up. I don't know if you've seen him pitch, but he's got some pretty good stuff. He's interesting to watch.
Prospect.
Yeah.
Williamson has been a decent plug-and-play arm in that back end of the rotation. He's not great, but he's a lefty who changes that arm slot and the different angles. So you've got potential there. I've seen them play in person. They're a fun team to play and to watch. Excuse me. Like they're a team that, as a Cub fan, I'm kind of scared of. Like
we're both converging at the same time. Both the talents coming to the major league level at the same time. Right now, it's looking like the Reds and Cubs and the Brewers always they do have Sal Frelick and Jackson Churio coming up at the same time. So it's looking like a 3-headed monster that I'm okay with.
Have a manager? Are the Brewers going to have a manager?
Right. I think you're talking about Craig Counsell not having a contract with the Brewers after this year.
Right.
That's I think a mistake by the Brewers to have him be in a final year like this, because he has just year in and year out turned the Brewers into contenders when they necessarily didn't even have a team like that. They traded Josh Hader away because they thought they had enough of a team.
Yeah, well, he just got career win number 700 yesterday as a manager, and he's only been coaching since 15. So
he's a child
in 8
still,
years.
Manager years.
Yeah,
he is the longest standing manager in the MLB, though, right?
I believe so.
He's
tenured,
17, longest tenured. Yeah, that's right. Longest tenured. Is it been 17 years?
No,
7
7
years.
years.
I think it's 7 years. Yeah.
Yeah. At least with his current team, but he's at the end of a contract. David Stearns just left, and that's the guy who hired him in Milwaukee. So my thought is he moseys over to New York to take Buck's job if Buck decides he's out as we end the season. But yeah, I think it just makes too much sense to re-sign Joey and give him that chance going forward. But the offseason is going to be a fun one, and we'll dive into that here in a couple of weeks. But we are in playoff mode. We are almost to the end of the season. The Cubs did lose, so they are still in the playoffs if this season ended today, but only by a half game over the Miami Marlins and 1 game over the Cincinnati Reds. This is the point where we give you our top 10 power rankings, which are powered by 10th Mountain Whiskey and Spirit Company. Don't have the logo, but I do have their whiskey. You can add on over to 10th Mountain's website. That is 10thwhiskey.com. Use promo code capital letters BNB for 10% off your order. And that's not just 10% off the whiskey or the brandy or the rye, anything. We're talking hats, glassware. I got myself a flannel shirt, very comfortable. Barrels, if you want a barrel, they've got tables for sale. You can get 10% off whatever it is. Michael likes to say, do your what?
Christmas shopping at 10th Mountain Whiskey.
Yeah, 10th Mountain Whiskey, 10% off your order. Mikey Burns, we're going to have to give the full 10 this week, buddy. So who are your top 10 power rankings? Right down the screen. You don't even have to pull it up.
Okay, so I had it pulled up and I was confused because I didn't see the T in the Twin Cities of the Minnesota Twins. I was like, did I really rank the Reds as 10? I don't remember that. How much whiskey have I had? But again, we've got right there number 10 for the first time in quite a while, the Minnesota Twins. Number 9, the Seattle Mariners.
Throat clear.
I was getting choked up that I thought the Cincinnati Reds were number 10. But 9, the Mariners. At 8, staying steady, the Philadelphia Phillies. The Toronto Blue Jays falling back a little bit at number 7. 6, the Astros. 5, the Blue Jays, or the Milwaukee Brewers. Holy crap.
Have another pour.
And then the top 4 staying steady, as in the Braves, Orioles, Tampa Bay Rays, and Los Angeles Dodgers.
Yeah, you almost said Blue Jays. Well, that was rough. Or my number 10 team, the Seattle Mariners, dropping a spot after a rough couple of weeks. The Minnesota Twins hopping up 4 spots, playing consistent baseball in the AL Central, kind of taking hold of that division. The Toronto Blue Jays 2 spots up to 8 after a 3-game sweep over the Boston Red Sox this past weekend. And again, these are our ratings as of early Monday morning, but we're giving them to you here on the podcast, just if you didn't catch our every Monday power rankings, again, brought to you by 10th Mountain Whiskey and Spirit Company. 7, the Philadelphia Phillies. 6, the Houston Astros, down a spot after a rough week as they lost 2 series to the Royals and the Oakland Athletics. Milwaukee Brewers up a spot, and our top 4 remain the same. LA, Tampa Bay, not the Toronto Blue Jays, Michael, the Baltimore Orioles, and the Atlanta Braves. In
that 133 proof hitting me hard, man, or something. I've
had 3 pours. We got to up your ante here on this, pal. Maybe I'm just still drunk from this past weekend and nothing phases me from the amount of whiskey that I had. But that again is our 10th Mountain Whiskey. Yeah, you weren't at Bourbon Fest. I've been doing my as the Dram Daddy does his workout to get ready for Bourbon Fest. Speaking of the Dram Daddy, if you haven't heard already, there's a podcast called Bums in the Bleachers. That is our guy at the Dram Daddy on Instagram, as well as Prazmaster. I believe his name's, I think it's Prazmaster on Twitter or Instagram. They have their own podcast, Bums in the Bleachers. Mikey and I are going to be on that podcast live on YouTube this upcoming Monday to talk Cubs, strictly Cubs podcast. Most likely going to be I don't know if I want to say let's go at this point because it could be a post-mortem by the end of this weekend.
Yeah, of talking strictly Cubs without having, we love to talk Cubs. That's our relationship.
Yeah. We text Cubs back and forth all day. But so go check out those guys. If you haven't done that already, Bums in the Bleachers on Instagram, Twitter, as well as their YouTube page. Cool guys. I hung out with John multiple times. He's a great person just in person, but I know he's a huge Cubs fan, and we talk about that all the time. So check us out on their channel. We'll probably post it here on our channel as well. And don't forget to follow us here on YouTube. We're at 2 different YouTube channels. Barrels and Barrels Pod is more so baseball related. Strictly Bourbon, BNB Bourbon on YouTube. So go check us out on those channels. Instagram, Facebook, TikTok at Barrels and Barrels Pod. Twitter, well, I guess it's X now. That is at Barrels and Barrels. Email barrelsandbarrels@gmail.com. If you want a hat or glassware, T-shirts, just reach out to us. We'll point you in the right direction and get you the comfiest T-shirts I've ever owned. And I'm not just saying that because it's our shirt. Like literally, I could wear this shirt all day, every day.
Yeah, absolutely. It's definitely one of those types of shirts that you want to make sure you're wearing all day, not on a short day.
Yeah. We are on Spotify, Apple, Amazon, Google, and iHeartRadio podcasts. Don't forget to rate us and review us. If you review us, we'll read it on air. It's been a couple of weeks, so we need to hear some more reviews. We'd like to hear what you think about our podcast, even if it's on YouTube. If you leave a comment in our
let us
comment
know
section.
what you thought of Wes's analytics here for the first
Yeah.
time on Barrels and Barrels. Let's hear it,
Yeah.
baby.
Yeah, loved having you on this week, Wes. Thanks for joining us. I think you're going to see a lot more of Wes here in the next couple of weeks as we head on into the playoffs. Wes, you got anything to add to the podcast here as we start to wrap up?
Yeah, if there's any negative comments, it's at BNB_Burns. You can tag
Man,
him.
I was really hoping you would say BNB Lombard there. I was really hoping
missed opportunity. You're right. You're right.
No, send him to Burns.
Yeah.
He's not going to read them anyways. Or at least if he does, he's just going to ignore them.
We're gonna DFA him.
Man.
Yeah. But it's been good to have you on, Wes. You'll probably see more and more of Wes here over the next couple of weeks. As always, we close it out in one way. Oh, before we end this, we've got more bourbon reviews on the way. We just dropped a Wardell Stephen Curry bottle review,
Yes.
which you're going to want to check that out on our bourbon page, our bourbon channel, BNB Burns. I do it every week. BNB Bourbon. They roll off the tongue almost the exact same. BNB Bourbon, BNB Burns. BNB Bourbon on YouTube. So go check that out as well. As I like to always say, Mikey Burns, take us home.
Let's go.